Welcome to my channel, Phrontistery. If you like, please share and like this video. Thank you very much. Hey guys, tonight we journey where no breath follows, into the still, sacred hush of what comes just after your final exhale. Not tomorrow, not after reincarnation or resurrection, but right now, the very moment after your name becomes past tense. You are not falling. You are not rising. You are slipping, like silk through an unseen hand. The room fades, not as if darkness comes, but as if the world decides it no longer needs to be seen. Around you, a softness gathers, something like fog, but warmer. Something like water, but dry. You realize it is memory. The warmth of every time someone thought of you with love, brushing your soul like a breeze. You feel your body loosen. It is still there somewhere, on the bed or the floor, beneath hands holding back tears. But you are no longer inside it. Not entirely. You hover, not with wings, but with attention. Some traditions suggest this exact moment stretches longer than an hour, or perhaps only a second, but in that stretch, you remember everything. Not as data, but as emotion. The time you laughed so hard it hurt. The time you held a stranger's hand in a hospital hallway. The way your mother looked at you when you first tied your own shoes, all of it blooming at once. Not a timeline, a flower. And just then, just as you begin to wonder, am I dead? You hear it. Not a voice, not a whisper, but a shimmer of intention. A nudge that says, you are not lost. You are just not where you used to be. A gentle quip arises in your mind, like a final echo of your personality. Well, I guess I missed breakfast. You smile, or at least the shape of your soul smiles, and you take your first step into death. It's not frightening. It's strangely familiar, like returning to a place you dreamt of as a child and forgot until now. The light is soft, not white, not golden. It's the color of relief. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while we drift, leave a comment below telling me where you're listening from and what time the veil thinned for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The gentle dismantling. It begins not with a sound, but with silence. One that doesn't merely surround you, but enters you, spreads through you like ink in still water. Your ears do not hear anymore, but they remember. Somewhere in that remembered ear, echoes still linger. The hum of a refrigerator, the soft creak of the door you forgot to fix, the rhythm of someone's breathing beside you that once lulled you to sleep. But these fade. One by one, your senses begin to loosen their grip. Sight doesn't go dark. It stretches. The edges of things blur into each other until you no longer see shapes but impressions. And then, finally, feelings with form. A chair might still be near, but it feels like regret. A curtain becomes longing. And somewhere in the corner of your dissolving sight, your own outline flickers, like smoke unsure whether to rise or rest. Some traditions suggest that in the earliest phase of death, your senses do not vanish. They reverse. Your sight looks inward. Your touch feels backward. Your hearing turns toward the music of memory. And so it is now. You feel the weight of your old body not as burden, but as absence. A glove no longer worn. A skin you loved, or judged, or tried so hard to change. You remember the ache in your knees, the thrill in your fingertips, the way your stomach fluttered when you stood on the edge of something, love or danger or both. But now, these are being unstitched. Gently, lovingly, as if the universe itself is undressing you from the costume of a single life. In the background, a whispering chant rises, though no one sings it. It is made of syllables you once spoke in sleep. It is made of dreams you had on nights you can no longer name. It carries your name, but not the one people called you. A name only your soul knows. Scholars still debate whether this stage is what the Tibetan Bardo texts describe as the dissolution of elements, the breaking apart of flesh, blood, breath, and bone into their sacred counterparts. But here, where you are now, it feels more like a return, as if you're being taken apart to remember how you were made, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. The first layer to fade is fear. It does not fight. It simply bows and walks away. Next, desire. Not love, not purpose, just the wanting. The itch to become, to be liked, to achieve. You feel it leave your chest like smoke exhaled on a cold morning. You are not empty without it. You are clearer. Then comes the final sense, the one you didn't know was a sense at all. Time. It begins to loosen like a knot soaked in water. The minutes don't tick. They sway. You remember being 3 years old and staring at the ceiling for hours. You remember that night at age 20 where 5 minutes stretched into eternity. You remember waiting in a hospital lobby, not knowing if someone you loved would come out whole. And now, all of it flows in at once, not overwhelming. The room that waits for every soul, you step through nothing and arrive somewhere. It's not a place made of stone or cloud, not a room with windows or walls, but it is undeniably a room. A holding space, a threshold of sorts. The air here doesn't move, but it listens. The light doesn't shine, but it notices you. You look down, not at feet, for you have none, not anymore, but at the outline of your former self. The memory of posture and skin flickering like fireflies around you. You wear your shape, but not your substance. This is the room between. Some traditions suggest that every soul, before it is judged, or journeys or forgets, first waits. A kind of cosmic foyer, where echoes of the life just lived swirl and settle like dust disturbed in a forgotten attic. Here, in this place, nothing happens. And that is the strangest thing of all. You feel for the first time the boredom of death. You want to ask, what now? But you have no lips. You think instead, and the thought shimmers across the room like a pebble dropped in a still pond. In one corner, your grandmother's laugh echoes for a second. In another, your childhood bedroom appears, briefly, then fades like breath on glass. The room is responding not to your voice, but your essence. Who you were, how you were, the imprint you left on others. One fringe belief from Polynesian lore tells of a waiting period before the soul can journey, sometimes hours, sometimes years. Not for punishment, not for purification, but for remembering. This is when the spirit relearns what it forgot during the noise of living. Here, in this room, that remembering begins. You recall a fight with a friend, not the shouting, but the silence that followed. The ache of apology unsaid. You recall standing by a tree at sunset years ago, doing absolutely nothing, and feeling somehow whole. You remember your first secret, and the weight of it. You remember how it felt to disappoint someone. And you remember the first time someone disappointed you, and you loved them anyway. The room doesn't react, it holds. You wander, not in steps, but in thoughts, not forward, but inward. The boredom grows not from emptiness, but from absence of distraction. Without time, without tasks, without television or teeth to brush, you are left only with yourself. And that is the true trial. Some souls flee at this point, rushing into the door that opens inward. The door before you does not have a knob. It has no hinges, no carvings, no visible sign of how it was built. It is not made of wood or glass, not of gold or bone, but of memory. A door made entirely from the weight and shape of your choices. Every decision you've ever made, woven like threads in an unseen loom. You feel it, not with hands, but with presence. Its surface pulses slightly with the echo of a million silent moments. Things you did without realizing. Things you never did but meant to. Glances you gave, glances you withheld. The door isn't locked, it's listening. Some traditions suggest that this is not a literal passageway, but a symbolic unveiling. The moment when the soul must confront not judgment, but self-recognition. And only then does the path forward become visible. So you stand, or rather, you remain. You do not knock. Instead, you remember. You remember the moment you lied, not for harm, but for convenience. You remember brushing past someone crying in the subway station, not because you didn't care, but because it was raining and you were late. You remember the time you held someone's hand longer than needed, because you sensed they needed it. Each memory hums. The door glows warmer. You remember when you lost something and pretended you hadn't, when you found something and returned it without fanfare, when you kissed someone you didn't love because you were lonely, when you stayed up all night beside your dog on its last night, whispering thank yous. The door pulses gently, responding. This is the initiation, not fire, not torment, not reward, but exposure. You do not see your life pass before your eyes like a film reel. You feel it from every side. You become the one who was hurt, and the one who caused the hurt. You become the one who doubted, and the one who was doubted. You become the sigh of relief someone felt when you forgave them. You become the tightening of a child's chest when you raised your voice, not as punishment, but as truth. And that truth is a mirror. One ancient belief found among mystics of old suggests that death is the unveiling of the first mirror. Not the one that shows you how you looked, but the one that shows you what you meant. And here it is. The door doesn't swing open. It breathes. You walk into it and through it and find not another place, but a version of yourself more translucent, more awake, more you than you've ever been. And suddenly, you follow a path that isn't really a path, just a gentle pull across the quiet, dew-draped field. The fog rises and parts not by wind, but by willingness. Each step is like remembering something long forgotten, not with your brain, but with your soul's marrow. You do not feel pain. You do not feel joy. You feel something quieter, continuity. Some Shinto traditions speak of musubi, the invisible thread of creation, connection, and becoming. It does not snap with death. It simply flows forward, as if the cord you thought tethered you to life was instead looping gently into the next landscape. Here, time slows, but not like in dreams. It is more like a sacred waiting room made of wind and memory. This is day 5, though you only know this the way trees know spring is arriving. Without calendars, but with certainty, you come to a small footbridge that arcs over a stream no wider than your shadow. The water moves like thought, slight, persistent, whispering. Some traditions suggest this is the river of first echoes, where the newly dead hear the soft imprint of their own voice, not from when they spoke aloud, but from when they thought something kind and never said it. The stream reflects not your face, but all the moments your presence helped someone else's life not fall apart. The time you listened to someone when they didn't have words. The time you returned something that wasn't yours, Not because you had to, but because it felt wrong to keep it. The water glows softly with those echoes. You cross. The bridge doesn't creak, but it remembers you. Across the stream, there's a gate. Not tall, not iron, not even locked. It is made of unfinished wood and rope and time. A Torii gate, symbol of passage from the mundane to the sacred. This is not the gate into heaven. This is the gate into ancestral breath. Shinto belief doesn't end the journey at death. In fact, it barely begins it. For the Japanese soul, the afterlife is a 33-year unfolding, an existential ripening, where the dead slowly fade from being mourned to becoming divine ancestors. And here, the first transition begins. You walk through. The grass hushes. The birds, who were never really birds, flutter like lanterns and vanish. And you stand in a garden, not Eden, not paradise, just a space that feels like it always loved you quietly. No statues, no angels, only stones, raked, perfectly imperfect. The lines in the gravel wind in circular patterns like the path curls through a thicket of wind chimes. But there is no wind, only your passage. And as you step between them, the chimes ring, not in chaos, but in harmony. One soft, another deep, a third almost silent. This is how the dead are remembered, some say, not with trumpets or tombstones, but with the faint music left in other people's lives. You keep walking, and the world bends with you, not dramatically, just slightly, as though the fabric of the afterlife is made of silk and breath. Every step is a small ripple. Shinto tradition teaches of the Tama, the soul, as something that does not leap instantly into transcendence. Instead, it moves gradually through phases of purification, of becoming spirit, then guardian, then ancestor. Over the course of 33 years, you now are only days into that long, sacred arc. Some scholars still debate how literal those years were ever meant to be. Were they symbolic or calendrical? A ritual framework or a metaphysical truth? But here, it doesn't matter. You are in the part of the journey where nobody remembers how to pronounce your name correctly, but they still think of you when they see a certain flower or hear the sound of sweeping floors. This is the middle ground of soulhood. You pass beneath paper lanterns hanging from invisible branches. Their lights flicker not with fire, but with shared memory. One glows with the warmth of your first love's laughter. Another glows with the time you nearly drowned but felt strangely at peace. Another glows with the apology you meant to give but never did, and yet, somehow, was still received. The lanterns do not speak, but they listen, and their glow deepens with each of your footsteps. You are not lost. You are being translated. Further down the path, a small shrine sits. Weathered wood, roof of moss, and a bowl of water so still it seems not to exist. There's a stone beside it, and a tiny brush resting atop. You kneel. You do not know why, but your hand picks up the brush, dips it in nothingness, and begins to write your name, not in language, but in feeling. And as you do, the water ripples once. A fox appears, silent. Not watching you exactly, more like watching with you. In Shinto, foxes, kitsune, are messengers of Inari, the kami of rice and prosperity. But they are also tricksters. You rise slowly, not because something calls you, but because the stillness begins to overflow. You were never told what came next. But your bones, or whatever you carry instead of them now, whisper, "Go." The fox is already ahead. It doesn't look back. It never has. But it waits. The forest changes as you walk. The trees grow thinner, taller, like memories stretching toward the sky, fading as they reach upward. The light here is softer, silver instead of gold, as though the sun has grown old and polite. In the Shinto calendar of the soul, this is still early. You are still becoming a shade, not yet a spirit. You are visible in dreams, but not yet powerful in shrines. You are felt, not remembered. Some traditions suggest the soul lingers close to the home of the living for the first 7 days. In this case, though, that home is not a building. It is the center of longing. And longing is portable. You pass through another gate, this one made of bone-white branches tied with threads of red. A torii still, but now it leans slightly, as if tired of holding up the weight of crossing. Beyond it is a clearing, empty, utterly so, a blankness, a field of unmade thought. This is not heaven. This is the waiting hall of unspoken prayers. Some say that before the dead can move on, they must walk through the wishes that were never voiced aloud. Those murmurs that died in throats, those desires buried beneath obedience, fear, or shame. Here they grow like invisible flowers. As you walk, you step over invisible roots. They tangle around nothing. They try to become. They fail quietly. You see them. Not with eyes, but with ache. The one who wished to sing but never dared. The child who wanted to be held one more time but couldn't ask. The lover who stayed silent because goodbye seemed kinder than truth. They surround you now. They do not accuse. They do not weep. They simply exist. And your presence gives them closure. The act of seeing becomes sacred. You sit in the middle of the field and let the silence hold you. The sky turns lavender above, unconcerned with your pace. A soft bell sounds in the distance again, like before, but lower now, rounder. It echoes 3 times. That means the first purification is complete. In ancient Shinto rites, purification, misoji, is not about dirt. It's about restoring harmony. And the soul, too, must be rinsed, gently, not scrubbed, of all the friction it gathered from life. Here, in the field of unspoken prayers, your edges are being smoothed. Not erased, not judged, just softened. The fox returns and sits opposite you. Its eyes reflect something you forgot long ago. Not a memory, a decision. The one that changed your life without you knowing. You reach out, but the fox dissolves into petals. And those petals scatter upward. You walk with less resistance now. The earth beneath you no longer crunches or shifts. It simply receives. The path narrows into a ribbon of soft moss, suspended above nothing. Or maybe it's cloud, or memory. There's no edge, yet you never fall. The next space appears as a small courtyard of quiet wind. It is enclosed not by walls, but by standing reeds, tall and golden, humming faintly with the breath of those who once waited here. You step into the center. In Shinto practice, there are 33 years of transition after death. The spirit is gradually lifted from Hotoke, a newly dead soul, to Kami, a divine ancestral force. This middle ground is rarely discussed. It's too subtle for words, too sacred for temples. But you're in it now. The boredom has returned, but differently. It's not empty. It's contemplative. Like tea cooling in your hand, like incense burning just beyond your sense of smell. The fox does not return this time. Instead, a single feather floats down. It hovers, then drifts past your shoulder. Some traditions suggest that birds are messengers in the in-between. They carry thoughts back and forth, between the living and the departed, between your past self and your possible one. You follow the feather. It leads to a shallow pool of ink-black water, still as silence. There's a low wooden bridge arching across it. No railings, just the gentle curve of surrender. As you step onto it, you notice your reflection, not of your face, but of your regrets. They surface softly, not to shame you, just to be acknowledged. Here is the friend you forgot to call back. Here is the kindness you withheld, thinking it would make you strong. Here is the lie you told to spare pain, and the pain it caused anyway. Each reflection trembles, then vanishes beneath your feet. This is not judgment. This is witnessing. In ancient Shinto, a soul is not judged. It is welcomed, healed, celebrated. But it must be cleansed by being seen clearly, even by itself, especially by itself. You pause halfway across the bridge. There is no rush. You breathe. The boredom deepens again, but now it feels almost beautiful. A fullness of quiet, a maturity of silence. The ink-black water beneath begins to swirl, not ominously, but with invitation. A gentle spiral of memory and meaning. One story floats to the surface. It's small. You were 8. You gave away a toy. You rise slowly, as if the act of standing is less about motion and more about agreeing with gravity. The paper boat remains, unmoved by breeze or time. The others, the grandmother, the unborn child, the quiet self from a life unlived, fade like shadows drawn in steam. They were never meant to linger. They came to be acknowledged, not possessed. You walk again. The path ahead is no longer a path, but a ripple, a slow unfolding of space itself. Like a scroll unrolling beneath your steps, revealing one silent word at a time, written not in ink, but in Ma, the Japanese concept of sacred emptiness. The pause between breath and meaning, the hush before a shrine door opens. In this place, the Shinto soul is called to its second remembrance. After the 7th day and after the 49th, the soul enters a deeper period, a long season of soft forgetting, not of life, but of identity. Some traditions suggest this is when your name begins to lose its grip, not torn away, just gently laid down, like a robe left beside a spring. You hear your name whispered behind you, and you don't turn, because it no longer feels like yours. Ahead, you approach a simple gate, a torii, weathered and low, barely taller than you. It stands not in front of a shrine, but over a field of dew-covered grasses. This is the entrance not to a temple, but to a moment. You bow slightly and pass beneath. Nothing changes, and yet everything softens. You step into the grasses, and with each footfall, memory becomes mist. The world you once knew dissolves. Not dramatically, but like tea cooling in porcelain. Here is where the soul enters the boredom of rebirth. Not the act of returning, but the waiting for it. It is said in old Shinto belief that for some, the soul waits 33 years before fully becoming ancestral. It hovers, it listens, it dreams beneath shrines, it watches families change. And you are beginning to feel that watching. The boredom now is exquisite. It's not restlessness, it's refinement. The way a monk sits not to chase thought, but to let it dissolve like incense. You kneel in the grass, not in prayer, not in exhaustion, just to feel what the earth still remembers. A beetle passes, unaware. The sky shifts its hue from pearl to indigo. Somewhere distant, a festival drum echoes once and stops. You wake without opening your eyes. It's not morning, there's no sun, but the rhythm beneath you has shifted, subtle, like the stretch of a cat that's been still too long. The ground breathes differently now, less like a bed, more like a tide returning. And though nothing around you has moved, you sense that time has. In Shinto belief, the 10th year after death is marked not by ritual, but by absence. It is a year when the soul is neither invited nor exiled. A year when even the ancestors speak your name more quietly, unsure if you are still listening. And you are, but differently. You rise, not with effort, but with invitation. The dream tree behind you sheds no leaves, but you feel it nod as you leave, as if it has finished watching over you, for now. The path ahead has changed again. There is no torii this time, no paper boat, just a field of mirrors, laid flat across the grass like lily pads made of memory. Each one flickers, not with reflection, but with possibility. Not who you were, but who you could have become. You kneel beside one. A woman kneels within it, younger than you remember being, yet carrying your sorrow in her eyes. She is braiding her hair, waiting for someone who will not return. Another mirror shows a child, you perhaps, running through orange autumn leaves with no destination. Another holds your face from a different life, dressed in robes of blue and gold, lifting incense toward a temple fire. Some traditions suggest the soul must walk through these mirrors to understand what it left behind. Not to judge, but to remember gently. You step forward. The mirror does not crack. It ripples. And suddenly, you are not walking. You are drifting through echoes of yourself. 1,000 unspoken moments swirl around you. Laughter you forgot to feel. Words you almost said. Apologies whispered only in dreams. You pass them like constellations, each one winking out softly as you move on. You do not linger. Because here in this forgotten middle of death, the soul begins to forget itself with grace. You are not vanishing. You are dispersing. Not erased, but unrooted. The boredom deepens, but it is no longer dull. It's sacred. Like the silence between temple bells. Like the space between names in a long family line. You do not dream, not in the way you used to. Instead, images arrive in fragments, like mist curling around lanterns, like voices carried by tide and wind. 11 years into death, the soul begins to unbind from the weight of language, not because words are wrong, but because they are too narrow for the width of memory. In this new space, you do not think in sentences. You feel in pulses. You understand in patterns. You remember without effort. And you begin to hear the world not through your ears, but through everything you are becoming. Some traditions suggest that by the 11th year, the departed are visited by spirits not of kin, but of kinship. That is, those whose lives echoed yours in secret, even if your paths never crossed while breathing. You feel them now, not walking beside you, but woven into the path. A woman who also grieved in silence. A child who also wished on cracked windows. A man who also bowed before leaving, though no one saw. You share something more ancient than biography, something like resonance. They do not speak, but you feel less alone. You walk through a forest of stone, not headstones. Those belong to the living. These stones are smooth, nameless, soft-edged from centuries of spiritual wind. Each one hums softly as you pass, like tuning forks set into the earth. You touch one. It remembers a scent, persimmons in early autumn. Another remembers a sigh, yours or someone else's. This forest is not for navigation. It's for orientation. You are not being tested. You are being resung. Some scholars still debate the purpose of these middle decades in the Shinto cosmology. Are they preparation for rebirth or the gentle evaporation of self into divine rhythm? You don't answer. You simply kneel and press your palm to a stone that hums your name in a way no one ever did while you were alive. For the first time, you feel heard without having spoken. A breeze passes over your skin, not air, but memory. And you remember that someone once waited for you by the sea. Not in this life, not in the one before, but across all of them. And maybe they still wait, or maybe they became the wave that gently pulled you here. You smile, and the forest smiles back. You walk with slower steps now, not out of weariness, but reverence. Even time has begun to bow before your pace. 12 years since death, and the world no longer pulls you forward. It unfolds beneath you, like a fan opening in the hands of a patient spirit. Each crease a life, each stroke of ink a lesson. You follow the breeze, though there is no wind. You are drawn towards something, not like fate, but like rhythm. Tonight, the path leads you to a garden of bells. They hang from threads you cannot see, suspended between bamboo stalks that sway without sound. The bells are made of bone, clay, and silver, each one with a story it no longer tells aloud. You walk among them. Some chime when you pass. Others remain silent. You reach out. One begins to ring, not with sound, but with remembering. It shows you a night long ago when you stood beneath falling snow and chose not to speak, not because you were afraid, but because silence was the only true offering. That silence has become a bell. You smile. In ancient Shinto shrines, bells were used to wake the kami, the spirit gods. But here, in this garden, they do not summon. They echo. Some traditions suggest that during this phase of the afterlife, the soul stops seeking and begins receiving. Not visions, not messages, but reflections, moments that once mattered and now simply exist. You sit in the middle of the bells. A small shrine rises beside you, not built of wood, but of breath. It vanishes if you look too hard, so you gaze with the edge of your mind. Inside is a single scroll, blank to most eyes. But to you, it sings, "You did not waste your time." It's not praise, it's just true. And you feel something strange, delight without source. A joy that doesn't spike but hums quietly in the soul. You are not being rewarded. You are being remembered by the world itself. The bells ring again. This time, they sound like laughter. Not yours, not anyone's, but laughter that belongs to being. You laugh too, soft and sudden, and for a moment you are so light, the garden lifts with you. And as you settle, you realize you have no more questions. Not because they were answered, but because they no longer bind you. The air smells of pine and fire. Somewhere incense you didn't light drifts upward, toward a sky that no longer cares what names stars go by. You are still walking, but now you walk with death, not after it, and the bells sing you onward. The road has turned translucent now, not invisible, but no longer made of dust or stone. It feels like walking across layers of breath, like memory layered upon memory. 13 years since your last heartbeat, and you've begun to notice that you are no longer walking on the path. You are the path, or at least what keeps it from vanishing. Ahead, a torii gate stands, not in crimson wood, but made entirely of slow-moving mist. It arches impossibly tall, bending over mountains that no longer exist except in story. You pass through, and your name falls away. Not lost, just unneeded. There is no forgetting, only unfastening. Some traditions suggest this is when the spirit no longer clings to the roles of living, the titles, the griefs, the cravings, the pride. You don't lose them violently, they simply become quieter. You reach a stream, but the water doesn't flow. It hovers, each droplet a suspended moment from your past lives. Blinks of awe, stifled cries, glances held too long. You kneel and run your fingers through it. The water does not wet your skin. Instead, it shows you. Not in images, but in sensations. You feel again the warmth of a cat sleeping near your ribs, the sting of winter wind across cracked lips, the taste of persimmon too early, sharp and unripened. And then, an odd memory. Boredom. Sitting for hours in a field, watching nothing happen. And yet, that nothingness feels so precious now, like it knew something you hadn't noticed. The stream invites you to drink. You do. And for a moment, you remember everything. Every version of you across lifetimes. Warrior, widow, weaver, wanderer, all yourselves blink awake at once, as if summoned by this memory water. They do not speak. They bow, and then vanish like fog kissed by sunlight. Some scholars still debate whether this moment is the return to source, or the beginning of true individuation, whether you're becoming divine or simply whole. The water does not clarify, it only ripples. You stand, your feet are no longer visible, not because they're gone, but because this path no longer requires steps, only presence. You move onward, though movement feels like the wrong word. You emerge from the mist and find yourself in a garden, but not the kind you remember. There is no symmetry, no fence, no bloom arranged for beauty. Instead, it is a wilderness of small sacred things. Scattered pebbles that hum when you step near. Wind chimes made of bone, feather, and wishbone. Lanterns lit by memory instead of flame. It has been 14 years since the world forgot your name, but you have never felt more known. This is the garden of lingering echoes. Here, every sound you ever made, every whisper, every laugh, every sigh, has become its own spirit. And they've been waiting. One by one, they approach you, not like people, but like presences. They nudge gently into your awareness. The breath you exhaled the night you almost told the truth. The soft chuckle you let out during a funeral because grief couldn't hold your whole soul. The gasp when you first heard someone say they loved you and you actually believed them. They don't speak. They join you. Some traditions suggest that in the 14th phase of the soul's journey, the spirit becomes porous, permeable to its own echoes. You are no longer separate from the vibration you once caused. You sit beneath a cedar tree that isn't quite a tree. Its branches are made of shadows, its roots of old lullabies. You hum, and the garden responds. A low wind lifts, and suddenly, you are hearing not just your echoes, but those of your ancestors. Not in language, but in resonance. A sigh from your mother's mother's mother. A heartbeat from someone whose blood you carry, but whose face you never knew. A melody from a brother who died before your birth, but never left the family's dreams. Scholars still debate whether this part of the Shinto path is literal or metaphor, whether the echoes are real or symbolic. But the garden doesn't ask you to decide. It just keeps blooming, with sound, with presence, with echoes. You walk to a small stone basin filled with water that reflects not your face, but the first sound you ever made, your first breath, your first cry. You bow to it. And for the first time in this journey, you cry, not from sadness, but from returning. You are not a ghost, you are not a god, you step beyond the garden, What lies ahead is not a place, but a waiting. A stillness shaped like a threshold. 15 years since you last spoke aloud, and now your voice rises. Not from your mouth, but from your being. Not words, but intention. You are met by a gate, not made of wood or iron, but of silence. It is woven from the pauses between thoughts, from the spaces between heartbeats, from the gaps where questions used to live. You reach for it, but your hand passes through, because it isn't locked. It only opens for stillness. So you breathe, not to change anything, just to remember. Some traditions suggest this halfway point, 15 years through the Shinto soul path, is when the spirit must decide whether to continue or dissolve. Not a punishment, a possibility. You do not choose in words. You choose by being willing to witness your whole self, without clinging, without fleeing. A mirror appears, hovering like a feather suspended in moonlight. You look into it and see everything you've denied, the parts you regretted, the versions you disowned, the nights you didn't forgive yourself, but also the tenderness you gave without being asked, the time you kept someone company when you had nothing left to give, the silent promise you kept for decades just because it mattered to you. And the mirror does not judge, it simply shines. And then it shatters, not violently, but gracefully, like a bubble reaching its end. The gate opens. Behind it, a room that is not a room. A space made of memory and moss, ink and incense. There is a scroll floating in the center. On it, your name, written not in kanji but in gesture. Your first kindness, your hardest honesty, your smallest unnoticed moment of integrity. You are not asked to read it. You are asked to bow to it. Some scholars still debate whether this scroll is real or just a metaphor for the karmic imprint we leave behind. Whether Shinto spirits carry records or if the record is you. But as you bow, the scroll folds itself into your chest. You do not carry it. You become it. And the silence in the gate becomes the silence in you. Not empty, not alone, just unhurried. The echoes from the garden, you walk through a clearing where time feels tender. Everything here breathes in rhythms that are not yours, and yet somehow are. There is a pond at the center, but it doesn't reflect light. It reflects consequence. Every step you've ever taken, every thought you allowed to root, every silence you kept when you should have spoken, and every silence that saved someone. This is not a place of judgment. This is the 16th year, the year of mirrors that reflect not the body, but the trail the soul has left behind. In Shinto tradition, some say the 16th year is when the spirit encounters the ripple, the delayed arrival of everything it ever set in motion. You sit at the pond's edge and watch. A child laughs in a field far away because years ago, you forgave someone who never apologized. A tree is standing, tall and wide, because you spared a seed once and didn't trample it. A woman lights a lantern every year, not knowing why. Only that something in her family line whispers she should. She's never heard your name, but you are part of the reason her grief breathes easier. This is how legacies echo, not in statues or stories, but in the untraceable kindnesses that outlive their source. Some scholars argue whether the soul is aware of these consequences, or if they belong to the living alone. But in this place, awareness is not a question. It is a song. You close your eyes. You hear the hum of connections, some still alive, some long gone. You feel the wind touch your shoulder like a friend you haven't seen in centuries. And from the pond rises a single lily. Black stem, white bloom. Its petals form a spiral, A priest once said this was the Shinto symbol for return, not reincarnation, but the spiral of presence. That even if the soul doesn't come back as someone new, it leaves fingerprints on existence. You bow, you whisper, "I remember." And the lily answers, not with sound, but with stillness. You breathe, not to go anywhere, but to witness that you never truly left. You wake without sleeping, not because you were dreaming, but because the soul sometimes naps inside itself, lulled by centuries of forgetting. Now, in this 17th year of the journey, the veil thins between who you were and what still holds your shape. You step into a glade that smells like old incense and moonlight. There are ropes hanging from unseen branches, Shimenawa ropes, sacred cords once used to mark spaces where the kami dwell. But here, each cord marks a choice you once made. Not grand ones, small ones. The time you waited 3 seconds longer to respond and softened someone's panic. The day you let someone cut in line at the post office and they didn't miss their train. And on that train, they met someone who would become their safe place. In Shinto, this is called musubi, the divine binding, the quiet joining of destinies through presence and intention. You reach out and touch one of the cords. It hums. Not a sound you hear with your ears, but one that resonates through your marrow. And as you listen, you begin to feel the fabric of the world not as something outside of you, but something woven through you. Some traditions suggest the 17th year is the beginning of divine memory, not recollection of a single life, but of the pattern your life helped shape. Scholars still debate whether the soul actually experiences this, or if it's symbolic of ancestral remembrance. But standing here, among these humming chords, you know, every moment was a thread. Every kindness was a knot that tied someone back to themselves. You find one rope that does not hum. It is still. And then it breaks. No noise, no pain, just a release. This was a moment you never took. A word you didn't speak, and its absence has always followed you, quiet, loyal, invisible. But now it returns to the sky, unjudged, unpunished, just acknowledged. You bow to it too. And in doing so, you release yourself from the myth that everything unfinished is a failure. Some things remain unspoken because their timing lives in another soul. You walk onward, lighter, humming the rhythm of the chords behind you. You carry no burdens now, only echoes made of silk. You follow the sound of rain that doesn't fall. Each drop exists only in potential, a rhythm the spirit remembers but the world no longer plays. You walk toward it anyway, as if your steps will call it down. The 18th year is known in some Shinto traditions as the year of awaiting, of lingering before transformation. Not because you are stuck, but because something is still being formed on the other side. You enter a hollow shrine, walls wrapped in wind. A single paper lantern swings slowly, not by gusts, but by memory. There is no one here, yet there is everyone. Their names echo along the beams, as if the souls who passed before you pause here once a cycle, to speak a truth they never found the words for. One voice whispers, "I lived quietly, but the silence wasn't mine." Another murmurs, "I never hated them, I just never healed." These confessions are not wounds, they are weather, moments that shaped without blame. You sit, you let the unsaid settle around you like dust. Some traditions suggest that in the 18th year, the soul reviews the lives of those it touched indirectly, the people who didn't know your name, but whose world shifted because you were. A stranger you smiled at on the worst day of their life. A gesture of grace that ricocheted into someone else's forgiveness. Scholars still question whether this layer of remembrance is real, or just a human need to feel that small acts matter in death. But here, you feel it not as a theory, but as breath. Each inhalation carries with it the weight of invisible blessings. Each exhale releases the need to prove them. You lift your hand. The lantern dims. Not because light is lost, but because it no longer needs to shine in the same way. You've seen enough to trust the unseen. The rain doesn't fall, but you are soaked in something gentler, something old, like wisdom wrapped in fog. And when you rise, your footsteps leave no sound. Because in this place, presence is louder than movement. And you've become present in a way the living rarely are. You walk into a clearing so quiet, it startles the thought right out of your head. There is a tree in the center, immense, unmoving. Its bark is knotted with time, its leaves still, not even stirred by breath or memory. This is the tree of the 19th year. The Shinto priests say it doesn't grow from soil, but from sorrow that never hardened into bitterness. Some call it Karamatsu no Ki, the tree of quiet watching. It has witnessed everything. Not with judgment, not with pride, just with patience. You approach it. Your hand hovers near the bark, and immediately it reflects the outlines of a memory, not yours alone, but a shared one. You see a meal prepared by hands that trembled from exhaustion. A doorway left open, even after the apology never came. A poem scrawled on a scrap and tucked into a coat, never sent, never read. This tree remembers the world's almosts. In the 19th year, the soul does not relive its own actions. It becomes the witness of others, not to evaluate, but to deepen compassion. Some traditions suggest that in this period, the soul develops the power of intercession, not prayer in the common sense, but the subtle ability to whisper peace into another's future through sheer, softened awareness. You sit beneath the branches. Above you, wooden plaques hang like wind chimes, Ima, inscribed with the wishes of the living. You read one. May she forgive me, even if she never says it. Another, please let the rain fall soon. You don't respond. You simply listen. This is your task now, to be the silence that holds the wish, not the one that grants it. Scholars still debate whether this stage is merely symbolic of spiritual detachment, or if there truly is a layer of death where souls cradle the aching whispers of those left behind. But you don't need the answer, because under this tree, you are not separate. Not from the sorrow, not from the wish, not from the rain. When you rise, you carry no answers, only the weightless memory of being heard, even in death. And that is enough to keep walking. The road turns soft here, not physically, but emotionally, like moss beneath bare feet, or the hum of a lullaby remembered but never sung aloud. This is the 20th year, the year of letting. Not letting go. Not yet. Just letting. You don't know where that verb ends. You pass through a torii gate carved entirely of wind. It shouldn't hold form, but it does. Some say the gate was shaped not by the spirits, but by the breath of those who couldn't say goodbye. There's a bell hanging from the center of the gate. Silent, rustless, untouched by time. As you walk beneath it, you feel something tug very gently at the back of your soul. Like a child letting go of your hand, not because they must, but because they trust they'll see you again. Here, the soul is said to begin the process of softening attachments, not severing, but loosening their hold. The Shinto texts sometimes refer to this as yurusu, a sacred allowance. It is not forgiveness, not quite. It is the permission for things to remain unresolved and still be at peace. You find a wooden bridge ahead. It crosses nothing. Beneath it is mist, not water. You step onto the planks. Each step you take sounds not like footsteps, but like pages turning. You don't remember writing the story beneath your feet, but you feel every sentence rising through the soles of your spirit. Some traditions suggest that in this year, the soul redreams moments it once rejected, memories too heavy to hold while living. You recall a look you once avoided, a silence you never asked about, a kindness you mistook for obligation. They come back here, not to haunt, but to ask, "Can I still be beautiful even now?" And you nod. You don't need to speak. The soul has learned to answer without words. Scholars still wonder whether the bridge in this myth symbolizes a final crossing, or an invitation to linger until the heart is light enough to float. You do not know. But when you reach the other side, the bell behind you rings on its own. Once. A sound like mercy wrapped in gold. You are quieter now, not silent, but hushed, like a temple at twilight. This is the 21st year, the year of listening to what wasn't said. It begins in a hallway, long and dimly lit by lamps with no flame. Each door lining this corridor belongs to a voice, one that never spoke what it most needed to. You pause before the first. It opens without effort. Inside is the memory of a man standing in his garden, holding a letter he never sent to his brother. He never found the words. You sit with him, though he cannot see you. You feel the ache where sentences were meant to be. A soft breeze moves through the room, and you hear it. Not with your ears, but with the part of your soul that understands intention. I meant to say I missed him. And you nod, gently, though no one watches. You pass to the next room. A child sits cross-legged, staring at the ceiling, wondering if it was her fault the fighting started that night. No one ever told her otherwise. You do not answer. You simply stay. Some traditions suggest that this year marks the soul's turn to serve, not in grand gestures, but in subtle ones. The grace of presence, the gift of becoming the silence someone once needed. You linger in room after room. There is no judgment here, only tenderness. One door holds a woman who prayed every night for strength but never told anyone she was afraid. Another contains a grandfather who longed to weep after the war but only ever sharpened tools. These are not confessions. These are unopened letters, addressed to no one, meant for everyone. The Shinto priesthood calls this kotodama no shiro, the white space of spirit words. Scholars still debate whether this phase reflects karmic purification or the evolution of empathy beyond earthly constraint. But in these rooms, you are not philosopher. You are companion. And when you reach the final door of this hallway, you do not open it. You place your hand on the wood. Inside is your own silence, the one you never spoke. The door does not open, but your hand no longer trembles, and that tonight is enough. You do not hear it with your ears. You feel it in your soul. A vibration, barely there, like a memory remembering itself. On this 22nd day, the quietness deepens. The world you've left has grown so distant now that even the echoes fade. And yet, there is one sound left. A bell. It only rings once, and only you can hear it. But when it does, something final begins. You walk now in a corridor of stillness. Not silence, stillness. The kind that waits without waiting. There are no colors here, only textures of emotion. The fabric of this place is woven from past thoughts, woven from promises you once whispered in the dark, and dreams you never dared say aloud. In many traditions, this moment is sacred. The Egyptians called it weighing the feather. The Tibetans speak of a mirror that shows your truest form. In Shinto, it might be the whisper of a forgotten ancestor gently turning your shoulder toward the path. But in the book no one wants you to read, it is simply called the bell. Some say this bell is not a sound, but a choice, so deep it can only be made by the part of you that was never born. It rings once, and when it does, all the layers of pretending drop like old garments. Your ambitions, your regrets, your roles, gone. What remains is the question. What are you without any of them? There's no one here to answer it for you. But there is a watcher, not a guide this time, not even a soul from before. It is you, or rather, the eternal you, the one who has watched you through lifetimes, through masks, through stories. It waits now, calmly, to see what you'll become without becoming. Some traditions suggest this is the moment when rebirth is decided, not by fate, but by frequency. Whatever rings true becomes your path forward. If the bell rings with peace, your soul may drift toward rest. If it trembles with longing, you may choose to return. If it's heavy with sorrow, a healing detour may begin. Scholars still debate what this bell. You no longer cling to memory, you carry it. By now, your soul is no longer just remembering who it was, but offering that memory forward. The experiences, regrets, choices, and gentle moments of presence are not things you own anymore. They are ingredients, seeds, and now you're asked to offer the fruit of what you've grown. It begins without instruction. There is no celestial clipboard or chanted hymn to guide you, just the quiet arrival of another soul, younger, lighter, not yet whole. Perhaps it looks like a stranger. Perhaps it reminds you of a version of yourself. Some traditions suggest this moment is a test. Others say it is a transmission. The lesson you refuse to learn in life must now be taught from death. Not by words, but by frequency. You become a subtle beacon. You emanate what you failed to live fully. If you struggled with patience, your soul now hums with the energy of unfinished understanding, and someone nearby absorbs that rhythm. In Victorian seances, there were whispers of unfinished business, but few knew that business could be handed off. A lesson isn't lost when a soul passes, it shifts bearers. You do not teach through perfection, you teach through your scars. In the realm just before transcendence, the spirits gather not to sing praise, but to exchange fragments, like old travelers bartering stories for firelight. The pain you once cursed becomes medicine for someone else's soul. Some cultures believed that death makes philosophers of us all. In these quiet spaces, you're not just remembering your truth, you're offering it, with no need for approval, no applause, only the silent, sacred transfer from one inner world to another. What you couldn't heal, you can now hand forward.